Welcome to another episode of Cadence Fishing TV, and I'm fishing with Paul again up in Yorkshire. So what's the venue, Paul?
We're on Aire and Calder Canal at Newbridge. It's a stretch that's going to be used in the National, as you know. That's why we're here today, bit of a practice.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, what a venue. We've walked a fair way from the car park,
yeah,
because you've been told that this is a good area.
I've been told that, yeah, but they've got to be pegs, or we've got to the pegs and they haven't been fished before, so I think we've been sold a dummy, but we'll see what happens.
It sounds like it,
Yeah.
but to avoid any shenanigans,
Yeah,
chap is drawn for us, and we've been allocated 2 pegs.
we have.
So there's no dispute this time, is there?
Unfortunately not, no.
And it's a nice day. It's quite bright, but there's a good wind, and I'm really excited. I've never seen the venue before, and like you say, it's going to prove very interesting for the Division 1 National that we've got coming up.
It is, yeah. It's going to be a bit of an eye-opener, I think, we'll see. But we've been told there's skimmers and odd bream right throughout the length, so let's see what happens, shall we?
Okay, well, it's going to be really interesting, Paul. I suppose we better make it into a bit of a competition.
We can't fish together without, can we? I've got mine.
I've got a pound in my back pocket as well.
It's
yeah.
well secured, is it?
Secured in the back pocket. And we're going to fish, what hours are we going to fish?
10 while 3, a 5-hour match.
10 while 3 sounds good to me. Let's get stuck in.
Let's do it.
Before I go, Paul, I've just spotted your famous pack up. So do you mind if I just have a little sneak in there?
Yeah, just have a quick sneak, see what there is.
Have a look in here, man. I'm going to get that looks like a lovely brownie. I think I'm going to kick off with that.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, mate.
No problem.
Good luck.
Let's do this.
Well, we mentioned that it's the first time we've fished this stretch, so when I was setting up I spent quite a bit of time plumbing the depth and learnt a lot about the peg. It's quite interesting for a canal. Obviously it's quite a deep canal, it's quite a wide canal. It reminds me of the Gloucester Canal, so I've kind of influenced that in my decision of how I'm going to approach it today. I'm going to use similar tactics to what I would on the Gloucester Canal. The canal slopes off quite deep, in fact right probably 2 meters off. It's almost 10 or 12 foot deep. Then there's a bit of a gradual shelf out to about 13 metres where it seems to flatten out. So it's very clear on the pole. The main line for me today is going to be fishing at 13 metres at the bottom of that ledge. I'm a little bit concerned about the wind because I think it could get windier, so that might make it a little bit harder, but that's certainly why I didn't want to fish any longer than 13 metres. I'm also feeding a few maggots just close in at 2 metres down the side just to see if I can catch any perch there. And then my other main line is on the feeder, and I chucked a bomb out to start with just to try and understand a little bit about the features over there, and it seems to be similar to this. So my main line I'm starting at on the feeder is I'm about 8 metres from the far bank. And my thinking there is I'll create an area where I'm going to feed, and then with time, you know, if I'm not catching or if the fish back off, I can still go a bit further over towards the far bank, because a lot of time on canals like this, particularly when you've got a lot of disturbance from anglers setting up, the fish will push right over to the far bank. So feed wise, on the pole, I just started off with 4 balls of ground bait, laced with casters and a few dead pinkies, and that was a sweet mix. And on the feeder, I've decided to use a fish meal mix to try and focus on the skimmers and bream. And at the moment, I've got a medium-sized feeder on, and I'm having regular casts just with casters and ground bait. So I'm kind of just feeling my way in without going mad with the bait, because there's obviously a lot riding on it, a lot of pressure with this competition. Well, we had a team meeting about the upcoming matches this year, and also in particular the Division 1 National, which is something that we really always look forward to and try and put a good effort in. And our typical sort of thinking behind practicing is we prefer to fish actual matches, practice matches, rather than just come in and pleasure fishing like we are today, because it can give you a bit of a false impression. So we've all booked into various opens in the run up to the National. There's lots of matches planned on both the Aire and Calder and the New Junction Canal. And an interesting format this year is that because it is split on 2 venues, you can actually place your anglers on each venue. So you can have 5 on the New Junction and 5 on the Aire and Calder. I think that's a good decision, because what it means is you can focus on the venue that you're going to be fishing on the day. And we've sort of already dictated that within the team, and if I get picked, then I'll be looking to be fishing on the Aire and Calder. At the moment, looking at the match results, it's been pretty much bream and skimmer dominated, and a lot of the locals are saying that the roach that are here in good numbers don't really start to feed until August really. So I'm not expecting too many roach today. But as always, it's always good when you're practicing to try different methods. So I am going to set a rig up for roach as well, and just try and learn a little bit about the venue. But I suppose for a first time to a venue, it's really beneficial just coming anyway, just understanding about the accesses to the different sections and how the bank is and sort of general depth, so that you can start to prepare by making up rigs and what have you, just to start to get in tune with the venue.
Well, today, don't really know what to expect. I've obviously asked a few locals and whatnot, and I think we're going to catch an odd skimmer, maybe a bream, a few hybrids, perch and roach. So my tactics today, I don't know what James's are, but mine are, I've cooked 3 balls of ground bait laced with castor and dead maggot and just a few chop worms at 13 metres, and on a shorter line, which is 6 metres, I've put 2 balls in with same sort of thing, chop worm, castor and dead maggot. I'm chucking out on the feeder just to the bottom of the far shelf, or where I think it is, because it slopes off here. It's not like where I fished before, where it just drops down and is flat and then back up. This has got a gradual slope, just these pegs we're fishing. So I've chucked to the deepest part at the furthest point on the feeder, which is round about 20 turns. And I'm going to fish small feeder, 2-minute cast for the first half hour to get some bait down, and hopefully we might pick something up. And on that line I'm feeding castor, dead maggot and a few micros on this one, just to hopefully that'll hold a few skimmers and bream if they do turn up. Also just put in a minimal amount of chopped worm in. So I've had a couple of matches on here recently, and my experience is showing, on the pegs I've drawn anyway, that putting too much worm in early on doesn't seem to work that well. So it's just getting a minimal amount at the moment. We can always add to it later. Looking like James is starting on the pole nice and early, so I'll keep my eye on him if I can. We're half an hour in and I've just had my first bite. Nice little skimmer, and that shows you the benefit of those 2-minute casts with a small feeder. Just keep that bait going in and it'll attract you some fish like that, hopefully. I'm sort of hoping James didn't spot me with that one, so he don't follow suit. Well, that's made me feel a lot better now. Single maggot, that one. But this is really what I was expecting first fish to be, a perch, so just don't know what's happened there, but that's the Aire and Calder for you. You just never know. We're in again. Skimmer number 2. Might turn out decent, this peg, after all. I'm trying to sneak it in without James seeing it. Not a bad one. Skimmer number 2. He's not watching, so I might get away with it. That was on double maggot, that one. Thought I'd just changed from my single. Whether that actually makes any difference at the moment, I don't know, but it was a better one. And the plan is working at the moment. It's pretty much how I thought it would do. So now we've got that, I'm just going to keep keep doing the same thing for the next 10 minutes at least before I ever go on the pole line. As far as today goes, our little knock up here, don't really know what weight to expect, but there has been some really big weights on here, not from this section, but the sort of average framing weight, if you like, is probably 25 to 35 pounds really, if you can get among these skimmers. Some matches have been won with over £100, there's been 60, 80 pound weights, but they're just from a certain few pegs. And I do believe that the National, if it's true to form, will probably be won with 60 or 80 pound, because somebody's going to draw along the boats in the wides and places like that where the bream live, rather than these smaller skimmers. But I'll be very happy with around about £25 today. So that'll put pressure on my mate over there. But we don't know. We're just going to fish for what we can catch and see how it goes.
We've been fishing for around about an hour now. After my initial sort of go on the feeder, I fished the feeder for about 20 minutes, and obviously just trying to get some feed into my swim without overfeeding it. I thought I'd give that a rest and have a quick look on the pole. I wasn't thinking I was going to probably catch too much on the pole to start with, but it was just interesting to have 5 or 10 minutes fishing on it to just understand about, you know, the toe, if there is any, and also just get everything perfect for later on in the session. And I did have a couple of fish. Had a small skimmer about 4 ounces and a small roach. So what I've been doing on that line is I haven't topped up with ground bait, I've just been loose feeding casters. Obviously my main aim is just to switch between the two lines. I've been back on the feeder now for about 15 minutes, and I've just cut back on the feed, and I'm just trying different hook baits and just trying to see what's going on out there. And I've had a couple of indications, so I know there's some fish out there, whether they're small fish or whether it's skimmers, I don't know. At the moment I'm just happy just to build the swim up nice and gently. So obviously in the National you're going to be looking for good team points, and a positive approach would work on some pegs, but probably wouldn't be great as a team tactic on the day, because you could overfeed the fish and perhaps regret it. So although we are having a competition amongst ourselves today, I am taking it quite cautiously to start with and feeling my way in. I see that Paul's had a couple of small skimmers and he's been concentrating on the feeder, so that's a good sign. We know there's some fish in the area, and I'm just being patient now, just trying to build my swim up. So hook bait on the feeder, I've been switching between smaller baits like double dead red maggot or maggot and a pinky on a size 20 hook, or I've got a size 16 hook where I'm fishing bits of worm, tipping that off with a castor or a dead red maggot. Just had a little indication again then. That's a good sign. But yeah, when you come to a new venue like this, it's good to experiment and obviously with time work out what the best hook baits are. Also learn about the different tactics needed. Anyway, Paul's just whistled to Chappie because he's got another fish, so that's what just put me off for a minute. Well, just as Chappie looked over to Paul, I had a good bite and a small skimmer, so I said I was getting a few indications, and it does look like there's some fish about. So that was on 2 bits of worm and a castor, and it took it right down. This is a nice venue. If I lived more locally, I'd definitely fish it more often and enjoy some great pleasure sessions on here. I think there's miles and miles of canal. A good tactic would be to do a bit of pre-baiting, and I'm sure that would result in some phenomenal weights of fish, because there's clearly a good head of fish here. For pleasure fishermen, definitely wouldn't be a venue to neglect. I think I'd be really keen to fish it. Well, it looks like Paul's swim's coming alive. That's another fish. I think it's a perch rather than a skimmer. Well, the rod I'm using on the feeder, I've only set one up, and it's our CR10 11 foot number 1, and it's a beautiful rod for this kind of fishing. It's got enough power to get the feeder out, but it's got a beautiful soft action, so it's great when you're catching silver fish like skimmers and bream, and when you perhaps have to fish a bit finer. The tip I'm using is the 1.5 ounce tip. Because I was told that this canal can tow quite hard, and it's towing at the moment but not really hard, and I didn't want to use too soft a tip because I'm actually using braid mainline, using 010 braid with a 4-pound shot leader, and it seems about bang on at the moment. Hook length I'm using is 011, and I'm switching between a 20 or a 16 Kamasan B560 depending on the bait. So you can see there the tip's bending nicely. It's not bending around too much, but it's going to register bites very clearly, and also indications, because certainly when you're catching bream, the last thing you want to be doing is striking at line bites or indications. So come on, bream. Oh, there we go. That was a really positive bite. Not a big fish, but I think it's another one of those skimmers. I might make a bit of a meal of it just to get Paul going. Yep, it's a fraction bigger. And again, it's took the bait well down. I was getting a few indications, and I just waited for a positive bite. I'll just quickly hold him up for you. What's he then? 8 ounces? Maybe 10? I was just thinking about introducing a bit more chopped worm, but at the moment I'm just feeding ground bait and casters. Let's try 3 red maggots this time, just as a change. I've mentioned it before in the videos, but I always like to, if I'm fishing more than 1 maggot, I like to hook all the maggots through the tail. I don't know if chap can pick up on that, just to prevent the maggots from folding over. I mentioned I was using a fish meal ground bait, and the mix is Bait Tech Special G Dark mixed 50-50 with brown crumb. So that's always interesting, just working out what the best mix is. Obviously fish meal tends to be a ground bait that you use when you're targeting bigger fish like bigger bream and skimmers. And on natural venues it can be quite powerful really, and be a deterrent for other silverfish like roach and smaller skimmers. A lot of the time when I'm bream fishing, I'm using fish meal ground bait. I'll mix the ground bait up the night before, just to make it inert, so that it's quite a dead mix. Oh, I think that was just a small fish on the maggot. Yeah, it looks like it might be a perch. It got me going a bit. Oh, no, it's not a perch. It's a little skimster. Just had a fancy for 3 red maggots. Let's try it again. That's the feeder I'm using. It's just a medium-sized Drennan, old school type of feeder with the holes taped up. And I'll often use that to start with because I can introduce quite a lot of bait and ensure that it's getting down to the bottom. If it was fishing and it was perhaps a bit clearer and a bit harder, I'd have probably switched over to a smaller feeder by now. But we're getting bites and there's fish out there, so I don't think we need to worry about overfeeding the fish. In fact, I might even think about putting a bigger feeder on and putting some more bait out. Perhaps do that, leave it for 20 minutes while I try the pole line and see if we can attract some bigger bream. I've just chopped up some more worm. I've chopped it really fine, and I've chopped up a good amount, mixing it with casters because I'm planning to give it a good hit of bait and just rest the feeder line while I try the pole. Well, this was my last cast before going on the pole, and I've got another skimmer, and this one feels quite a bit better. So I think that injection of chopped worm has helped. There we go. Yeah, that's my best skimmer so far. Well, that's definitely the best fish I've had so far.
Well, I was just catching an odd perch or two on the feeder line, so I gave it a rest and went on the pole. But I've seen James has caught me up a bit now, so gone back out on the feeder, and first chuck after giving it a rest is that little beauty. And that might just about catch me up with James as it's going. Oh, he's going to kick. Get him in the net and see if his brother's there. We've just had that decent bream there, and that just shows you the benefits of giving your swim a rest. As I was saying just before I caught that, I'd been catching a few skimmers earlier on, and then it turned to just the odd perch out the blue. So in my way of thinking was too much disturbance for them skimmers and bream, and so I needed to give it a rest. So that's what I've done. I went on the pole, had a perch and a little skimmer on the pole. Saw James was catching me up with a few skimmers of his own, so I decided to go back on the feeder, and that first cast in, I was rewarded with that nice bream. So let's hope that it carries on like that through the day. I've topped my pole line up as well now. I've fed a bit more on that, a few more particles in that one now, because I feel that really the feeder's going to be king on here for this little knock up today. So I filled my pole line in, plenty of chopped worm, plenty of castor and dead maggot, and I put quite a few micro pellets in. So if they do turn up on that line, on the pole line, then that might be really beneficial to us, putting that bait in for now. But watching James, he was catching quite regular, but maybe he's slowed down a little bit now. So we shall see how it goes. James has just got another one. I can't believe he's on phone, putting his bet on. And his rod's obviously gone round and it's hung itself. You on phone to bookies there? I said, were you on the phone to the bookies there? Putting an extra quid on?
Well, that's the best bream of the day for me so far, about £2. I've had a run of smaller skimmers, probably 8 to 10. We've been fishing for about 3 hours now, so I haven't actually come off the feeder. Obviously I'm getting indications and bites, so I've decided to stick on it, but I'm still keen to try the pole. I think what I might do in the next sort of 10 minutes is top up my pole line, just give it a chance to settle and then give it a go. But if those better bream turn up, then I definitely won't be stopping fishing on the feeder.
Well, I've had to wait a long time for that bite. I've just gone back on the pole because I've had a bite for a long time on the feeder. And I hooked a bream and lost it, and then not had a bite on the pole for a while. Now I've just got myself a little perch, which I'm gonna net, because they all count, even though I feel as though I'm quite a long way behind James now. I was bagging on the feeder. Where have we got? Here we go. And I just can't get a bite on the feeder at the moment. So I'm hoping that pole line turns up for me. Well, we're in to the last hour now, or heading into it, and things just haven't gone to plan, unfortunately. I caught quite early on the feeder, and I did say earlier, feeder's really the thing if you're going to win. It seemed to go quiet, and as you know, I fed topped up on the pole line with quite a bit of bait, hoping that some bream would move in on the pole line and give me a last good couple of hours. But being on the pole line, I hooked a good bream first put in, and it spun round in my peg and come off. And since then, I've not been able to catch on the pole, only small perch. So that sort of failed. I'm back on the feeder now, and same thing again, all I can catch is perch. And every time I look up, James is playing a skimmer, so my pound's looking pretty sorry at the moment.
It's just gone a bit quiet on the feeder, so I just thought I'd quickly just show you the rig. That's been the best sort of length of tail. I've got about 2 foot hook length and another foot or so to the feeder, and as you can see, that's just a simple paternoster. So I've got the feeder swivel threaded through onto a loop, which is around about 6 inches long, and then I've just got my hook length coming off that. So it's a very simple rig, but one of my favourite feeder rigs really. I think you could consider setting up a different rig with a bolt rig and a much shorter hook length. I think that could work on its day, and actually today we've caught a lot of smaller skimmers, so next time I come I think I'll probably try one of those, but I've been happy with that rig. Hook length's that Vest Pro 0.11, and I've swapped between a 16 or a 20 Kamasan B560. So I think I'm going to give that a rest for 10 minutes and try the pole. One thing that's of note is the last half an hour the tows really picked up, and there was a big boat came through. I was warned about the fact that the canal can tow well, so I've actually set 2 rigs up. That's a 1.5 grams Sensor's float. I think that one's called a Thames. It's got a good thick tip, and my intention was to use bigger baits on that, like worms and perhaps 2 or 3 dead maggots. I fished a 012 main line down to a 010 hook length and a 16 B560. And then I've also set up a slightly lighter gram rig. That's a Census Letitia with a wire stem, and I've used a 08 hook length and a size 18 fine match on that one. Obviously I haven't really fished the pole much because I've done quite well on the feeder, so it'd be interesting to see if there's anything sitting over that feed. I did top up with a good amount of ground bait, so there might be something there. I think I'll try a good piece of worm and a dead red maggot, and I'm fishing about 6 inches over depth. The canal's actually towing to the right, so it's towing against the wind. And one thing I did on the pole line, so I actually fed it to the right. So when I worked out that the canal was flowing to the right, I thought I'd feed to the right because it's much easier to run onto your feed. Also, don't like to reel my feeder and any fish that I'm hooking on the feeder through my pole rig, or through my pole line rather. So I actually cast my feeder and set that swim up slightly to the left, just trying to keep the two swims apart. So as you can see, that's still towing quite hard, but that 1.5 gram rig at the moment is working quite nicely. I haven't got too short a line between the pole tip and the float because with it being windy, you want to try and keep your rig quite still, and the longer line just helps really. But I think that's a good consideration for the national, the wind factor, and also the fact that the canal can really flow. So I'd probably want an even heavier float set up, perhaps 2 or even 3 gram for when it really flows hard. And there's a bite, and we've got a fish. Not sure what it is, whether it's a skimmer or a perch. Yeah, it's a perch. So there's fish to be caught on all the lines. It's not a massive fish, but you probably want to be feeding another couple of lines for perch close in. Let's try a couple of dead maggots this time. Well, I've got another nice sized skimmer, not a monster, but a good one. And again, that was on 2 bits of worm and a dead maggot. That's been my best bait today. It's amazing how hard the canal's towing at the moment. It's actually bending the 1.5 ounce tip right round, so... Oh, don't want him to go back. Hold on, I'll just hold him up for you. It's 8 ounces. Well, the National's always a highlight of my season, and I'm really looking forward to this one this year. The Super Team's had a good record over the years. We've won it 5 or 6 times, and personally I've never won it. I've had a silver and a bronze medal, so winning the National would just be absolutely amazing. That's the thing for me about team fishing. Obviously, match fishing's so random with the draw, you can't rely on drawing on fish all the time. But if you're in a team match, you're fighting for your mates, and that's what I really like. So sometimes a really good performance off a tough peg is much more satisfying than perhaps winning the match or winning your section on a flyer. But having said that, I wouldn't mind drawing a flyer on the day either, so we'll have to wait and see. Paul, that's a great net there. You got 13 pound dead.
I'd say 13 pound and half an ounce.
But you're not the scoutsman.
Right, yeah, I'm happy with that, James.
13 pound, well done, mate.
Cheers. Well, James, the moment of truth. I'll just check the scales.
As long as you're not winding them back.
No, they're weighing heavy. I'll just show the audience. Look, that's weighing slightly heavy, so I'll wind it back a little touch. 16 pound 8. Well done, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Well, I really enjoyed that today, Paul. I think we're both quite surprised, really, with what we've weighed. It's definitely more than what we thought.
Yeah, it's good. And those pommies, as they call them around here, them small skimmers weigh quite heavy.
They definitely do, yeah. And it was a good tussle, really.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? A good crack as normal, yeah.
So I know you're fishing in the National. Good luck on the day. Yeah. Maybe we might draw in the same section next time.
That would be good, and then we could have a pound on it as well, couldn't we?
Yeah, that reminds me, actually.
Pound?
Because you do like your pound, don't you? You're going to have to give it.
I don't like it. I'm giving it away now. There you go. Well done, mate.
Thank you very much. Thanks for watching.